Medicine in the Victorian era was a little more wild than our modern practices, and while some things worked, a lot of others were definitely choices. So everybody and their mother has their own methods that are guaranteed to get rid of hiccups, be it holding your breath, somebody's gonna scare you, drinking water backwards, distract yourself, the list goes on and on and on. So if you lived back in the Victorian days, however, you could be advised to inhale chloroform, a chemical found in floor polish. It's also the most popular way to knock people out when it comes to TV shows and other media. So sure, yeah, your hiccups would be gone, but also you'd be unconscious. By taking these lengths to reduce the annoyance of hiccups, vital organs paid the price. Also, until the mid-1900s, chloroform was used as an anesthetic to reduce pain during medical procedures. Today, it is definitely not used in this way due to its harmful effects, because chloroform has the potential to damage the nervous system as well as the liver and kidney. Don't believe me? Alright, let's see. According to experts, breathing air with chloroform for a short time causes headaches, fatigue, dizziness, and may cause cancer. Drinking water with chloroform damages the liver, the kidneys, and also may cause cancer. If you eat food with chloroform in it, yep, you're gonna damage everything and cancer. Even touching liquid chloroform causes sores, skin irritation, and not to sound like a very broken record, may cause cancer. In the 19th century, cigarettes were widely considered to benefit health. Tobacco advertisers often used the depiction of an ear, nose, and throat doctor to promote cigarettes, because people in those days didn't know about lung cancer, but they knew it was rough on your throat. This was a quote from Dr. Robert Jackler, founder of the research group Stanford Research into the Impact of Tobacco Advertising, which documents the history of, well, you know. Folks knew smoking irritates and makes you cough and gag, so having a throat doctor tell you it's okay to smoke was key to success in advertising and sales. By today's standards, the ads were shocking. In one ad, a doctor describes how somebody could live to 100 while promoting the virtues of smoking. The none too subtle message was that if the doctor, with all of his expertise, chose to smoke a particular brand, then it must be safe. Now, doctor is in quotes because advertising by real doctors was considered unethical. Unlike with celebrity and athlete endorsers, the doctors depicted were never specific individuals. Because why? Well, physicians who engaged in advertising would risk losing their license. Only one ad that I found depicted an actual doctor, and this ad was a rare exception. Dr. G. Edward Roerig practiced initially in Chicago, later in LA, and ironically, he died of lung cancer. So because of all this false information, asthmatics would inhale smoke in hopes of ridding themselves of the condition. And since today we know it kills and damages the bronchioles, we know it only would have made limited breathing much worse. So technically, I'm not supposed to name bad things on here, but I think when I say nose powder or no snow, you know what I'm talking about, right? So what is considered an illegal substance today used to be prescribed for an extensive list of illnesses. As one of many cases of creating addicts from patients, no snow was used as an anesthetic for toothaches. Also, dentists used it during surgeries. The history of the white stuff is charted with specific reference to its usefulness both as a medicine and for anesthesia purposes. It is pretty common knowledge that coca leaves were used as a local anesthetic throughout the history of the Incan Empire of Peru. In Europe, however, its medical usefulness was not fully recognized until a fellow named Karl Kohler used it to anesthetize the cornea of the eye. And over the next 20 years, it became a popular medicine and tonic in Europe and America. But then reports began to appear claiming that in America, it seemed to underpin growing crime figures. So as a result, the substance use was restricted to specific surgical procedures and medicinal preparations. So today, it is still a popular local anesthetic in operations of the ears, nose, and throat, and it is also used in a preparation given to alleviate the pain of terminal illnesses. For nearly 2 centuries, people used strychnine pills to keep alert. Athletes took them to keep energy levels up. Students used the medication to stay awake during exams. This can be used for almost anything, because who needs coffee when you have the strong stuff, right? And this was before energy drinks, so before your Monsters, your Red Bulls. Unfortunately, just 5 milligrams of the stuff was enough to kill. Less than this amount, it caused rapid heart rates, loss of consciousness, cold sweats, so I suppose I'll just stick with my morning Red Bull, I guess. Claiming to cure tuberculosis, in 1887, William Radham used plant-based ingredients and water to create a substance that he passed off as a medicine that would kill all the microbes in your red fluid stream and cure you of most disease as well it's at it. In his book, Microbes and the Microbe Killer, William made the very simple statement that all diseases have a single origin. He said there is, in truth, but one disease. Drawing on a combination of personal narrative, pseudoscientific jargon, and emotional appeals, William used his book to market a product that cost virtually nothing to produce, yet yielded significant profits. The logo for William's Microbe Killer, which decorated the cover of his most famous book, would have been familiar to American newspaper newspaper readers of the late 19th century. In the Virginia newspaper, the Roanoke Times for example, the words microbe and his last name, Radam, appear on more than 200 pages in 2 years, so between 1890 to 91, or approximately once every 3 days. And these ads appeared with banner headlines proclaiming the greatest disease of the age, all disease is caused by microbes, life without health is a burden, and nothing succeeds like success. Advertisements by the local agent in Roanoke included testimonials from local people who had experienced great relief and looked forward to regaining their health only after taking this microbe killer. So, by the way, in this time period, tuberculosis was responsible for about 1 out of every 10 deaths. It was more commonly known as consumption, and it was dreaded across society because it affected everybody, all social classes, all age groups, and it was considered incurable. It would result in a long, debilitating illness. So finding a cure was considered a big miracle. In the end, William Radam's extraordinary success in marketing this product not only made him rich, it also made his product an early target of efforts to monitor food and substances. In April of 1910, 12 cases of the microbe killer were seized on the grounds of false, exaggerated, and misleading labels, and the contents were thankfully destroyed. 4 years later, in 1914, following amendments to the Act in 1912, a shipment was seized by government agencies, and after a hearing by a jury, more than 800 cartons and boxes of this killer were destroyed, but advertisements were still appearing. After the product was finally analyzed by experts, it was determined that each bottle was mainly water with almost undetectable levels of sulfuric acid, the stuff in batteries. By the late 19th century, milk was believed to be the perfect substitute for human redness, and the fatty, oily qualities would become white cells. However, while a few instances of this procedure were successful, more often than not it resulted in death. In one instance, the transfusion of milk dropped a patient's pulse immediately, to the point where they had to be resuscitated with a combination of pain-killing fluid and whiskey. Yeah, they only lasted 10 more days after the operation. Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup was a popular remedy for young folks experiencing anything from teething to everything must go. So what were the secret ingredients in these 25-cent cure-alls? Well, according to some articles that I read, a heavy percentage of booze and that pain-killing fluid again seemed to be the answer. Later on, this soothing syrup, along with others, was rightfully condemned. In a lot of articles, folks were like, yeah, this is a killer, and articles advertised, if you value your human's life, maybe never use any of this. Here's a big word to try and emphasize: xenotransplantation. This procedure involved the transplantation of the interstitial gland from a chimpanzee into an 80-year-old man. They wanted to bring him back to full health. Thankfully, one news article that survived the time detailed the procedure, saying this gland, being vital to the male organism, was naturally impossible to transfer from man to man, so that led him to go to the nearest species of monkeys. Thankfully, this was eventually debunked. Professor Julius Wagner-Jauregg won a Nobel Prize for his treatment of paresis with a malaria pill. So during his research, he discovered that the condition of patients would improve after recovering from some disease that produced a fever. And after the big world event that killed a lot of people popularized the use of penicillin to treat syphilis, this whole thing was replaced. Finally for today, ever hear about a whale motel? An article from 1899 reported on a hotel in Australia where you could go for treatment for arthritis. So in this treatment, whenever a nearby whale died, patients would be rowed to it, then the whale would be cut open, you'd make a little hole in the body, and the patient would lay down in the carcass for a couple of hours. Allegedly, this process relieved soreness and inflammation, and how was this all discovered? It was discovered by a man under the influence who was staggering along the beach, and when he saw a dead whale cut open, took a header into the decomposing blubber. Gross, but if it worked, I guess. Well, that's all for today, folks. I've been Alexa. See ya!